Hey everybody, Professor Snart just checking in for our English 1102 online class here as we are working through Unit 3 right now, managing the general and the specific. So this is really one of the most maybe fundamental concepts that we'll try to put into practice, learn about and put into practice in the essays and writing assignments that we're doing for the class. This idea, and I presented it in kind of visual terms, which I find is a little bit helpful. And the whole idea is obviously thinking about within an essay or even just an individual paragraph, at least in terms of the kind of writing that we're doing in this class. There's lots of other kinds, but for this class, which is, writing an argument, an interpretation kind of a thing, one of the most important parts of effective writing is the writer's ability to manage the general and the specific, or move between more general kind of idea level statements and then provide support or the details, the more specific statements that would go to prove that idea. So the stick figure that you'll see in the unit here, or maybe you've looked at it already, is meant to represent kind of where an essay begins as far as the most general, where it gets to all of the support within each of the body paragraphs, and then it concludes really by returning to the idea that it started with. It doesn't go off in a different direction or get suddenly really, really general and really broad. So it's a fairly straightforward idea, at least in terms of seeing it visually. Of course, it's a lot more challenging to actually put into practice. So the parts are labeled here, and again, it's interesting to note that the shape of an essay overall in terms of narrowing to a thesis, providing support, and then a conclusion is actually more or less the same, just on a different scale, as would be the case for a paragraph, where instead of a big introduction you might just have one or two sentences that lay out the topic or the idea for that paragraph, and then supporting details, so every body paragraph has direct quotation in it from the primary text, the short story that you're talking about or whatever it happens to be. And then for most body paragraphs, you'd have a transition into the next one, or you might be moving to the conclusion in that last body paragraph. So whether it's the essay overall or just an individual body paragraph, they both kind of follow the same focus, or general focused idea, support, and then conclusion transition. So they both sort of follow that visual model. I provided an example here where you can see how that works when it's actually in writing. So you can kind of imagine if you were to take the short paragraph here and then sort of make it, make the font bigger so it took up more space, you could actually draw the stick figure over that paragraph and see how it works. There is some material then on MLA citation, which is hopefully not new to people, but might be for some, depends on how you covered it or if you covered it in 1101. But it, like the general specific kind of idea, MLA citation is really crucial for this class. So it's absolutely imperative that you get it right. That means citing things in your text correctly, putting together a work cited correctly, finding and using the right kinds of sources. So we would never use web sources. We're always going to use things from databases, for example, when we need secondary material. For the most part, we will stick to, at least early on, using just our textbook, so the primary source, and which moves us into the next piece of this unit here, the flight patterns, reading, and then the short quiz here, and then the writing assignment. And the focus of the writing assignment then is to just get you to put into practice on the level of the paragraph, so not worried about the whole essay, but just paragraph at this point. The idea of managing the general and the specific, so starting with a topic sentence, providing direct quotation to support that idea, and then some sort of conclusion sentence. So we kept it really simple, so you're not writing a full essay, you're just making a straightforward statement about William, the main character in the short story Flight Patterns, and just make a statement about what you think one of his main characteristics is. So it's not even an interpretation of symbolism or theme or anything that dramatic. It's really just a character analysis and even simpler than that, just one aspect of that character, not trying to cover a whole bunch of things. So what's most important here is not the precise argument you make, like what you say about the character, but getting the pieces of the paragraph correct. So you're starting with the topic statement, you're integrating quotations effectively to support that idea, and then concluding. So there's lots of instructions, examples, reminders here. Of course, we want to stay away from the I voice because it just gets in the way of what we're actually trying to say. So be sure you read these directions carefully, and then I kind of say it over and over again, but don't wait until the last minute to start doing the work. Even if you end up submitting close to the deadline, it should be the case that if I look at the data for that document, it was begun days before you've submitted it. So if you're beginning a document on the very day that it's due and 2 hours later submitting it, and the work is suffering, it's not following directions, it's missing pieces, it's just making mistakes, there's really no reason for that because you have lots of time to be doing this. All the directions are there, and especially if you get in and start early, you've allowed yourself the time to edit and revise, which is important. But also to be in touch with me if you do run into any problems with finding sources. Have I cited this correctly? Any kinds of questions you've left yourself time for. If you're always leaving it to the last minute, you just don't have time for that, and obviously the work's going to suffer. And that becomes more and more the case the deeper into the class we get, because obviously the material gets a little more complicated. The writing assignments themselves are more involved. So we start out very simply in the course, but we kind of build and build towards completing those longer essay assignments. So be sure that time management is something that you're thinking consciously about here as well. Okay, so I'll leave it at that. If you have any questions, be in touch with me, and I'll talk to everybody soon.